Hello, my name is Hortencia. I will be discussing how we can improve our measurements of a country's progression by incorporating aspects of GDP and SPI. Getting people and countries accurate measurements of progression is important. The main indicator right now of a country's progression is GDP. GDP is flawed, just like any other measuring tool. This is not to say any of the alternatives I will be providing are flawless, but there are alternatives that can give us a different perspective on a country's progression. But before we even look at those, I would like to formally discuss what GDP and SPI are and why each are flawed. Afterwards, I will explain how different alternatives can help improve measurements and progression. Now, what is GDP? GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product. It has increased in use in the 1950s, according to Ida. She wrote an analysis in the Ecological Economics book. GDP measures limited aspects of the economy, according to Ida. GDP also measures economic activity, according to Gary Jacobs. It measures things like price and value, and it focuses on comparing countries to one another. But GDP has mistakenly been used, as I mentioned, as a method to measure welfare. GDP is not designed for that. Now, let's discuss why GDP shouldn't be able to measure welfare and why it is flawed. When there's a tragedy that happens, GDP increases because the expense going into that is seen as positive. An example of this is a forest fire. The cleanup and the redemption enhance the welfare, but that is not true. They only enhance the amount going into it. Many people like to look at GDP as an indicator that the country and its citizens are progressing. Some of these people even use it as an indicator to move to the country because they believe that the citizens are thriving. But GDP excludes many things people should know about, like how personal freedom and choice are in a country, how personal rights are progressing, what access and availability to education are provided, and how happy people are in their countries. Now, what can measure something like this? That's where the social progression index comes in. Dr. Bonlert defines SPI as a tool that measures development of major social conditions and people's well-being. It mainly focuses on measuring specific things like freedom, choice, sanitation, personal safety, sustainability, and well-being, as well as many more. Although SPI sounds like an amazing alternative to GDP, it does have some flaws. Dr. Bonlert defines SPI as an inherently multidimensional and complicated indicator. There are multiple organizations that measure social progression using SPI, like the Organization of Social Progression Imperative. It uses 12 components to determine social progression. They measure all their components equally, and according to Dr. Bonlert, that provides incomplete overall scores because they assume all components contribute equally to improving welfare. As we have seen, both SPI and GDP have flaws and advantages, but providing alternatives can bridge both of their flaws and provide improvements in countries' progression. Now, what are these alternatives? Well, there is the Index of Sustainable Economics Welfare, Genuine Progress Indicator, GPI, the Human Economic Welfare Indicator, HEWI, and Green GDP. But the two alternatives I would like to focus on that semi-correlate with one another are the ISEW, which stands for Index of Sustainable Economic Welfare, and GPI, the Genuine Progress Indicator. Now, how does ISEW help bridge and conquer the flaws in GDP and SPI? Well, the Index of Sustainable Economic Welfare allows for a balance in income distribution and environmental costs. It doesn't just combine everything like GDP, which is where we get a lot of the miscommunication. The Index of Sustainable Economic Welfare aims to measure the consumption-related services that directly influence human welfare. It basically measures the benefits of economic activity. Countries like Australia, Austria, Chile, Denmark, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Scotland, Sweden, and the UK all use this. The reason that this alternative is so revolutionary is because it adapts GDP's approach to non-marketed goods and services, such as housework. It also covers health expenditures, road accidents, and much more. The Index of Sustainable Economic Welfare does have some overlapping ideas with the Genuine Progress Indicator or Index. The Genuine Progress Index is a bit different because it does focus on components like crime, divorce, and unemployment, which are a bit easier to measure. It is seen as a method that is more achievable and it is a little bit more appealing to the public. GPI and IACW take into account things like the environment, pollution, and quality of life. They're able to help with more of the limitations of GDP, as we know. Economic progression can't be achieved if there is not sustainability and health in the citizens. Overall, GDP should not be eliminated. It should collaborate with other measuring tools to get accurate depictions of national performance. Thank you so much.